My name is Jeff, and I'm speaking to you from Belleville, Ontario. So I worked in as an automotive painter in an auto body shop since I was about a teenager. So I did that for about 9 years, and just over the course of 9 years, I guess I was exposed to a chemical called like isocyanate. So I developed like respiratory problems, and I was eventually diagnosed with occupational asthma. Common when there was a lot of work to be done for vehicles to be sprayed both in and outside the booth. So, I mean, the chemicals, they don't really smell like too bad. I guess you kind of get used to them, right? So it never really hit me that they were, I guess, as dangerous as they were. So just, I guess, that long time exposure just over the course of 9 years um, it just caused a bit of respiratory problems. So, um, I mean, it wasn't until afterwards, no inspectors came over the course of 9 years, so I never knew, right? I guess it was a small shop. So, I didn't find out till later, like you're supposed to wear like a breathing apparatus that intakes fresh air into a mask. So I just wore like cartridge based um, filters at the time, and I don't know how often or if at all they were changed. So, and then I was using that to spray, and then it wasn't until after I got sick, and then I went to these specialty clinics that I realized, the chemicals were quite dangerous, and that you were supposed to wear some pretty intense PPE. When I filed the claim at first, the employer tried to sort of like talk me out of it. So there was a conversation just before I left that, the doctors, weren't correct, or they weren't like what they were saying wasn't true and such. So the employer was trying to at first trying to discourage me from filing the claim, and was saying that it would open up, I quote, like a can of worms. He said at the time. So, um, but I pursued it just because the damage that was done was quite serious, and then it was about 2 years being away from work. My lungs eventually actually became better just from being away from work. But over the course of 2 years, they improved. But there was a pushback from the employer at the time to discourage from filing the WSIB claim. So I think there was a lot of I had to be significantly proactive with the WSIB. At the time. Like I had to write a lot of letters. I'll do a lot of stuff in writing, and a lot of communication on that to sort of push that to go to like a specialty clinic. I had to explore in my own occupational medicine specialist, because there was a lot of doctors, including my family doctor at the time, didn't know any sort of occupational medicine specialists, and a lot of people don't know anything about like what isocyanate is and all that, right? So I had to do like a lot of research on my own to kind of I guess talk to doctors and kind of tell them a little bit about it. So I mean, I was lucky at the time that the family doctor I had listened to a lot of the concerns, and a lot of the times when I found a doctor for a referral that could specialize, or had some educational background in this and that. My doctor made that referral, and then that provided a lot of information for which was sent to the specialty clinic eventually that I saw with the WSIB. So I think that was definitely beneficial to do some proactive work on my own, because all that information, and I also made sure that it was also sent to the specialty clinic so that they could review any prior findings and that. So there definitely was, I had to be, very proactive on my own to navigate, a healthcare system that doesn't really know much about, occupational exposure. And, a lot of doctors didn't know anything about what isocyanate was. So, I had to sort of carry documentation on it, and just copies of reports from other occupational medicine specialists, just so those doctors would be able to see that when I went for those assessments at the time. Um, I think it was extremely stressful um, at the time. I had to navigate, the healthcare system kind of on my own, and there was a lot of having to prove, like with the WSIB, um, because like that, this in fact, there was like I had to like, prove a lot of, um, the exposure and that. So I had to really sort of like collect and made sure I had copies of all the consultant reports and made sure that they were sent to the doctors because a lot of times when I went, they never had documentation from another doctor, so there was that lack of communication with each other, right? So I had to kind of go to those appointments with copies that I got from my family doctor of all the different consultant reports, and I would keep them. And then when I would go to these referrals, whether it be like a specialty clinic or another referral for my family doctor, I had all that information at the time, and that definitely was very helpful. But it was very stressful because I'm trying to get better at the same time, but I'm doing all this paperwork as well, and so it definitely took a toll over the years of doing all that. So overall, I think both on myself and my family it was a very stressful ordeal. Yes, definitely. I think it was very, I'd say, adversarial.
Okay.
I had to make sure that I put mostly everything in writing. Um, there is definitely a point where they question the legitimacy of the claim, even when their own doctors and own specialists agreed with my doctor. So it was definitely a very stressful and like a hurtful experience because um, even when their doctors agree with what your doctors say, you sort of get a sense of relief at the time, and then you think, okay, now they referred it, and their doctors have agreed with it, and then that ends up not being really the case. And I had to take it to eventually like the Fair Practices Commission, who had at the time just sort of blatantly said that they didn't believe um, the severity of what I was experiencing at the time. So um, it definitely was, very stressful. I had to go, to the Fair Practice Commission, like I was saying, and it was, basically, I guess they didn't believe me, but and that's very stressful and hurtful too, right? I'm not, no one in their right mind is going to spend 10 years battling the WSIB uh, to you know um, con them and such. It's like it's not going to waste 10 years of my life like that. So the fact that they're uh, just brushing aside their own specialist recommendations was very hurtful, and it definitely caused some probably setbacks and interfere. It definitely was problematic to recovering at the time because it just causes more stress and that. Um, I think there's a lack of empathy or understanding of what workers go through. So I don't think I think maybe it seems like they just don't haven't really maybe walked in the shoes of the worker in that, and I think that maybe what it comes down to, that there was a time when you would have like a face-to-face meeting at some point with the case manager prior to um, going into a work transition program and that. And I know later on there was a lot of switching of the case managers, and I think there was the detachment that occurred after that. So you're constantly switching between case managers and that, and I think I must have went through at least four or five over the course of my claim, and I think there was definitely detachment um, after that because I think they just kind of read the file and then um, because they aren't really familiar with the file, they definitely automatically might jump to conclusions that this person's not being truthful or something, and then I think that kind of causes a lot of tunnel vision on their part. So definitely, I would probably maybe educate them, or have them maybe experience maybe from the worker's perspective, and then maybe not put it not so much where the files are being transferred back and forth, just so that maybe like a case manager who's familiar with the file, and then just so that sort of empathy can be kind of maintained, and that rapport or relationship between the worker and case manager is probably still maintained. That I think it's definitely something to stick up and fight for your rights in that. And I mean, that's exactly what I did. I mean, it took 10 years, but I knew it was just it was unjust and such. And um, if one worker is, if one worker if isn't given what they're entitled to, it will just keep happening over and over again to other people. So I still felt in my situation as well. It was still important just to also just fight in that and such, and even if it took many years, but um, eventually when everything was resolved, like it was a relief, and now I could focus and for on recovery, it was such a long battle, but now my medication and that's covered, and it is definitely you have to hang in there, and you'll have to, and if you have any friends or family that are able to help you get through it as well, um, that's definitely beneficial. But I would say that it's definitely important to fight for for what's unjust and that, and it's tough, but as long as there's someone in like a group as well to stand up for everyone, and that things will get better, and yeah, um, it's definitely tough, but there's always light at the end of the tunnel.